Doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Why don't we just get into previewing this game? It's certainly been a wacky year of college football. There's been a lot of different projections and preseason predictions, before this season started. And while Bears and the Wildcats are playing about how everyone expected, I would even argue that they're playing worse than people expected. But although they're underachieving, Colorado certainly is not. The Buffaloes are 3-0, while the Wildcats are 0-3, and it's just so interesting to me because these two teams were projected to be battling for second to last place in the conference this season. Like both teams, all the projections were Arizona's going to be last, Colorado's going to be second to last, or Arizona's going to be second to last and Colorado's going to be last. Like that's basically how it was. Everyone was projecting these two teams to not be very good, and like everyone was saying that and then here we are, the Buffaloes are 3-0 and trending upwards while Arizona continues to spiral into the ground. They're currently on a 10-game losing streak dating back to last season. And, you and Jason over at Buffalo Dash have been very high on this Colorado team from the beginning. So you obviously knew something that nobody else didn't. So, why don't you tell me a little bit more about this team? What is Colorado doing this season that, has allowed them to just completely exceed everyone's expectations?
Yeah, dude. Excuse me. Jason and I, we were, I think we were positive on this Colorado team, but not nearly as positive as they've proved to be. So, we were definitely coming into the season looking at the season as an opportunity for us to rebuild, just because it's obviously been, a super funky season with COVID and everything. And so then for the Buffs to, so for the Buffs to actually kind of be on this 3-game winning streak this season is definitely a surprise. They ended up going with a starting quarterback that me and Jason were not particularly strong on. So we were basically pushing for the true freshman Brendan Rice to be not Brendan Rice, Brendan Lewis, to be the starting quarterback, because we were sort of really big on let's get the freshman quarterback in there, build the system around him and let him sort of be the leader of this team for the next 4 years. And then they ended up going with Sam Neuer. So Sam Neuer played safety under Mel Tucker actually last year, even though he was recruited to Colorado as a quarterback, and is in his 5th year and was actually thinking about entering the transfer portal going into this year. And then the fact that Carl Durrell decided to go with him was sort of a big surprise, and me and Jason definitely did not think it was the right choice at all. Since seeing him play and seeing that Carl Durrell is really sort of leading this team in a way that they play sort of within themselves rather than trying to keep up with teams that have super strong passing offenses or just really strong run games, etc. It's like the kind of thing where we definitely they don't play the sexiest brand of football, but they play just a brand of football that, gets first downs, moves the chains, and has been, winning games just sort of inch by inch. But I will say that, having watched, the Arizona games thus far, Arizona's been putting up a fight with really, really good teams that were, for example, the USC game, right? So USC, Arizona managed to close that USC game down to, a pretty tight game versus Arizona. And I think that that's a testament to the fact that COVID has definitely evened the playing field for a lot of teams, but Arizona is capable of putting up a fight against, really good teams in this conference. And they just haven't really seen that win yet.
That game against USC was the only good game. They were terrible in the other 2 games, but it's just so crazy because I just can't help but think how differently these two teams are trending right now. Colorado has all the momentum in the world right now, riding this win streak, and its star players, and are just proving how good they actually are. And Arizona is just the polar opposite on that scale. They haven't won a game since October of 2019, not October of 2020, October of 2019. It's been over a year. Current players are opting out left and right, and future commits are recommitting and reopening their recruitments. And Arizona has lost 2 future commitments in the last few days. It's a tough scene right now. And, I go back to one of the biggest complaints right now that I have about this team and about this football program is just the lack of brand and, the lack of identity that this team has or doesn't have, I should actually be saying. I mean, I don't mean to, I don't want to bombard you with questions, but I just can't get over the fact that this Arizona team is the only team in the conference that just hasn't figured it out yet. Like Colorado is 3-0. UCLA is 500 for, the first time in the Chip Kelly era. Oregon State just knocked off Oregon and spoiled their college football playoff hopes. Like everyone, all these teams that have been struggling in the past years have somehow figured it out. Every team except Arizona. So like, what is Arizona doing wrong? Like, is it a branding thing? Like, how big of a factor has Colorado's brand as a football program been playing out this season, with its new head coach? Because it really feels like, it's a fresh start for Colorado. Like, is that what's made them successful? Like, is that what it is?
I think it is. Colorado had really sort of, like, the football program in Colorado had really, I feel like, sort of relegated itself to accepting mediocrity as the fate of Colorado football year in and year out. I mean, it was the kind of thing where we were going approximately 500 more or less pretty much every season, with the exception of 2016, where we made it to the Pac-12 championship, and they started this whole hashtag of like the rise is real, right? It was like, like Colorado's coming back to the the form that we saw it in the form that existed. We didn't see it, us personally, we were too, we weren't even necessarily alive yet, but in the late 80s, early 90s, when Colorado won that national championship in 1990, and then was this national powerhouse, and so everybody's like, oh, this is back. And then we get blown out by Washington in the Pac-12 championship, and proceed to have like 2 losing seasons following it, and then we fired our head coach. So it was we had definitely struggled with that similarly, and so. And people kind of thought that Mel Tucker last year was going to bring in that new brand, so to speak, of football, especially coming from the SEC. Bringing in like an SEC defensive coordinator, where I think we can all agree that in the SEC they just take football's a different deal in the SEC, right? They take it seriously to a totally different level than most things are taken seriously, like anywhere, let alone sports, right? And so then for Karl Dorrell to come in and sort of change the way that this team's playing. So, I mean, I think over the course of the last couple of years, since I've been a CU football fan, since I've football, one of the things that we've had this issue of doing is, like, especially with Steven Montez at quarterback and stuff, is, the kid had a huge arm, and we would try to then pace with teams like a USC, right? So we played USC last year, and Keaton Slovis, one of the better quarterbacks, I think, sort of has emerged to be one of the better quarterbacks in the nation. Following him earning that starting spot after they had some injuries last year, was putting up massive numbers in terms of throwing yards and stuff compared to Colorado. And they have a great wide receiver core and stuff. And then what happened last year is, when we played them, that we started trying to sort of go like shot for shot with them, like, in terms of stretching the field and things like that. And that wasn't necessarily where our strengths lied. And so what I've been really excited to see that Karl Dorrell's doing is the fact that we have this really strong defense this year. We have like sort of a veteran defense, let way less young players or new players to the positions on defense compared to our offense. And while we have a lot of potential for talent on the offense, we don't have nearly as much sort of veteran experience, and starting with the quarterback, right? The most important offensive position of it all. And so I think the fact that he's kind of chosen to take CU football in this direction of, we're just going to play within ourselves and limit mistakes and limit turnovers and things like that, as a result, sort of try to develop a little bit of just momentum by just doing that. And that, if we just do what we know we're good at, it'll begin to win games. That's what I've really seen to be sort of the big success for Colorado thus far under Karl Dorrell. And so I'm excited to see where that goes longer term. And obviously, this could look a lot different next year when, we bring fans back into the stadium and stuff like that. But I think for right now, I'm excited to see the way that he's sort of reshaped Colorado's football brand, if you will.
I love that.